Hello, welcome to the third in a series of Geospatial Big Data webinars presented by GCS of Missoula, Montana. Today's webinar topic is Leveraging Location Analytics, Delivering Spatial Algorithms and Functions. Hi, my name is Kevin Corbley and I'll be your moderator for the session today. And let me set the stage for our webinar by providing a little bit of context. We hear a lot about big data, but it's important to understand that geospatial organizations face big data challenges that are unique. With this webinar series, GCS has been showing how custom solutions can be developed both efficiently and cost-effectively to address those challenges using the fusion of cloud, mobile, and analytical technologies. Today, we'll be discussing how location algorithms and functions can be applied to big data to derive compelling business insights. Our demonstration will give you a first-hand look at how location analytics can be applied to big social media streams in real time to measure the sentiment of the population within a geographic area. GCS has dubbed the solution Social Doppler. That's similar to Doppler radar used for weather forecasts, and you'll see why in a few minutes. And let me take a minute to introduce our presenters today. We have Dr. Alex Philp, the president and founder of GCS, and Brian Collins. He's the senior systems integrator at GCS. Before I give you details on today's session, let me tell you a little bit about GCS, the company presenting the Geospatial Big Data webinar series. GCS is a geospatial solutions company that delivers intelligent analytics through cloud networks and mobile platforms to provide answers to complex business problems. And the solutions we'll be discussing today were or are being created as part of much larger comprehensive big data solutions developed by GCS for specific clients. And I'd like to go over a few housekeeping details before we get started. We do have 1 hour scheduled for our webinar today, and we plan to finish on time. Please also note that audience members will be muted for the entire broadcast. But we do value your participation, so please don't hesitate to send our panel a question, and you can do that at any time during the webinar by typing it into the questions box on the right side of your screen. And we'll answer as many of those live as we can during the last 15 minutes of the session. In addition, we'll have 3 poll questions where we will solicit your responses to issues related to location analytics. And also, today's webinar is being recorded, and you'll receive a link shortly after we're finished, letting you know where you can access the recording. And by the way, I should add that if you missed either of our first 2 Geospatial Big Data webinars in June and August on the topics of cloud and mobile technologies, you can find those recordings on the GCS website at www.yourdatasmarter.com. And we also encourage you to be on the lookout for a continuation of the Big Data webinar series in 2014. The first webinar of next year will be in January, and we'll send out announcements once it's scheduled. We had a lot of fun in our last webinar giving away a location-enabled Google Nexus 7 tablet. So we're going to do it again today. One of you in our audience today will be winning the Google Nexus 7, and we'll be doing the drawing at random just before the Q&A session. And you have to be online to win, so stick around for that. Let's take a quick look at the agenda. As I mentioned, I'm your moderator for today. And next up will be Alex Philp. He's going to be providing an overview of geospatial big data solutions and location analytics. And then we'll turn it over to Brian Collins, and he's going to walk us through a demonstration of that social Doppler solution that I mentioned a minute ago. And then we'll go back to Alex. He's going to give us some conclusions and wrap up, and then we'll have the drawing for that tablet that I mentioned, and then we should have about 15 minutes for Q&A at the end. So what do you expect, what do we expect you to learn from today's session? Here's what we hope you're going to learn. We want you to understand how the location components of geospatial big data can be leveraged with a variety of algorithms and functions to benefit your organization. We also expect you to learn how to combine the analysis of what, when, and where to understand why an event occurred. And of course, you're going to learn about social Doppler, which applies continuous cascading analytics to social media streams to examine the sentiment of a specific population. And also, you're going to learn about providing real-time business marketing intelligence to clients through Social Doppler. All right, and that brings us to our first poll, just to get the audience warmed up a little bit. The questions and answers are going to appear on your screen. You'll be able to click on an answer. So here is the first one, and that's going to pop up on your screen in just a second. Okay, and the question is, does your organization currently use any form of location analytics? Pretty straightforward. So we ask yes, no, but you plan to, or no, we don't plan to use location analytics. And in this case, obviously, we'd just like you to choose one. So we'll give you a minute or two to find the poll box on your screen. And yeah, it looks like you all are doing pretty well. Already 3/4 of you have voted. Interesting results. All right, very good. I'm going to close the voting off just another 5 seconds here, and then I'm going to show the results on screen. This is pretty interesting. Okay, I'm going to close it off, and let me show the results there. All right, well, and the answer, is your organization currently using any form of location analytics? 39% of you said yes, 44% said no, but you plan to, and about 17% said no, no plans to do that. So pretty interesting there. And I'm going to put the poll away, and there we go. And we're ready to move on and get started with the main part of the webinar today. I'd like to welcome Dr. Alex Philp. He's going to start the formal presentation. Alex, go ahead, turn on your mic, and go ahead. You can take the controls back over, and it's all yours.
Okay, Kevin, thank you so much. And welcome to all of our visitors to this webinar today, the third in a series on geospatial big data. We really have enjoyed doing this, and we're very, very encouraged by the results and the interaction we're having with folks around the country regarding as a result of this webinar series. As Kevin mentioned, thank you for that introduction, Kevin. Today we're going to be talking about location analytics, and what does that mean, and how does that help your organization solve business problems today? We feel that there is a unique opportunity now in the geospatial community to begin to bring what we all know so well, or we're learning to learn well, regarding spatial algorithms and functions to the business problems of today. The scenario we've worked on today is taking, again, from customer engagements that we've found in the last year, year and a half, and if you've watched our previous webinars, you'll realize that we're combining cloud technologies along with mobile technologies. And this webinar is designed to really unpack and demonstrate and discuss a series of functions or algorithms that we are bringing to bear on a discrete business problem. And in this case, the problem really is, how do I increase my sales? How do I reach my audience better? How do I get them into my store? And what are the tools available to us today? Some of these tools, very traditional. Some of the data, very traditional. We are going to be showing things that we think are on that new frontier of location analytics. Of course, from our perspective here at GCS, location analytics is a function of, or part of, this phenomenon known as big data. We happen to specialize in the geospatial components of that, and as many, many people have discussed around the country, and this debate and dialogue is continuing, it's very useful in many instances to talk about big data in two fundamental ways. The 4 V's, and what we've introduced now for about the last year, this notion of the 3 A's. The 4 V's of big data is we know we're dealing with volume. We know we're dealing with lots of data. In this example we're going to show today, we're leveraging a component of Twitter feeds. The Twitter system today is producing roughly 700 terabytes of data every year, 2 terabytes of data daily, and that might be conservative. So we're in petascale class problems. Soon we'll be reaching exascale class problems. Most geographic information systems, most organizations, local county governments, most businesses are not prepared to deal with the volumetrics. Velocity. This example today, Social Doppler, is really looking at data that is both at rest and in motion. We specialize here at GCS in streaming analytics. The idea of taking algorithms, taking functions, some simple, some complicated, applying those to data that is always moving. We thought social media feeds, in particular Twitter, is a very good one. If anybody's been following recently, they set a world record. Recently, 140,000 tweets a second, averaging about 5,800 tweets every second. And that is a significant velocity. We've dealt with problems that have more velocity. Variety. What are we doing today with unstructured information? Most of the colleagues on this call are people that are new to the geospatial community. We know databases. We understand structure. We like to build our rows, our columns, our tables. We like our taxonomy. We like our schema. Well, sometimes the world's messier than that. And there's a vast variety of information that doesn't come neatly packaged in a nice file or in a nice database schema. Text is a good example. Audio is a good example. Elements of video is a good example. These are things that are overwhelming our networks today in terms of the volume and the variety. So we're going to talk a lot about analyzing text here. We're going to parse text. We're going to get text. We're going to make meaning out of text from a location perspective. And then finally, veracity. How do we make sense of this? Is it inconsistent? Is it incomplete? Is it ambiguous? Is it deceptive? So we have to be looking at truthfulness in data. And then we really feel that it's very important in GCS, and we do a lot of this with our clients. We talk about getting to basics. Is your data accessible? And if it isn't, why? Who are you serving? If we're dealing with a county government, a public government, a city government, if it's private sector, accessibility of your information is key. Is it going to live here? Is it going to live there? Is it in a private cloud, public cloud? Affordability. Systems today, solutions today need to be affordable. There needs to be constant attention paid, as we all know, to that return on investment. What is it? And what is it going to cost me? We do not have engagements anymore where people just open up the spigot and give us a bunch of money to solve problems. We constantly are having to define the affordability parameters of projects, solutions. And then finally, agility. I would imagine everybody on this call realizes that the pace of change when it comes to the geospatial technologies that are out there, not even including a whole brand new series of functions and algorithms that are being developed from a variety of industries. This stuff is changing incredibly quickly all the time. So you have to be agile. You need to develop agile methodologies in order to deliver the solutions, and you need to be thinking in iterative phases. And those are things we suggest, and that's in fact what we're going to be showing you a little bit of today. Location analytics, another big buzz term. I know many of you on this call probably have a different definition or are struggling to come up with definition. When we talk about what does location analytics have to do with big data, well, of course, analyses we think is a fundamental dimension of big data. Location, for the rest of the world, unlike us as GIS practitioners or specialists, this is leveraging the where of the problem. Understanding relationships, spatial relationships, understanding what's next to what, understanding proximity, buffer, a lot of things we're going to talk about. But it represents a very, very important domain in big data that I frankly think we have just scratched the surface. If you look at some of the largest IT companies or social media companies or advertising companies, the Googles, the device makers, the Twitters, the Instagrams, the Yelps, of course the big players, the Oracles, the Microsofts, the others, I think we're just coming into our own right now in terms of really figuring out how to leverage and exploit the location component of analytics today. Why would an organization want to leverage location? We all know location, location, location. We've heard that. We get that. I think intuitively we all understand it. But whether it's citing a store or figuring out my route or figuring out a network analysis or figuring out competition or looking into the socio-demographic element of my population or really getting into mood, there are endless ways in which location can be leveraged. And again, that's what we're going to be showing and talking about today. What kind of organizations rely on location analytics? I don't know. McDonald's, Sears, FedEx, every major retail organization I know, the U.S. military, county governments, city governments, bus routing systems. It is really amazing the number of organizations that are leveraging location analytics today and are trying to make major investments. Our scenario today, which represents a customer that we have had that we can't reveal the customer, is really about a small to medium enterprise that represents 5 to 6 stores that is looking to grow. So this isn't just for the big boys. It's not just for the little organizations. It's for all organizations. Location analytics, at the end of the day, as I mentioned, we think it focuses on the where. There are when problems, there are what problems, and obviously we're trying to get to why. Some of the things we're going to be talking about today deal with proximity, density, buffering, routing, clustering, and one of my favorites, pure and simple, statistically defensible correlation. Correlation done on a many-to-many scale with n number of actors operating both in real-time, non-real-time in a particular geographic basin. Leveraging location analytics is more than just geocoding. We know that. It's more than clicking buttons and conducting geoprocessing. It's getting very, very creative today in terms of how we're building what we're doing. Now, all this has to be brought into a platform, and there are many ways in which that platform can be built and delivered today, actually more economical and more commoditized than ever before. GCS specializes in bringing this together, tailoring the delivery mechanism to the client, but ultimately we think the future is that analytics platform. It's not just simply understanding the cloud. It's not simply building apps and putting them on mobile devices. It's analysis. Therefore, we have to talk about architecture. We've got to talk about the hardware and software combo, but increasingly less important, we have to talk about the roles of the cloud and the mobile and how that all comes together into a solution architecture. We don't just run around designing and building and delivering algorithms for the sake of it. Our clients are demanding rigorous attempts at understanding analyses. So you have to select the right ones. You have to think about open source, closed source, proprietary, etc. And then, of course, people may or may not have existing million-dollar investments, $100,000 investments in their existing GIS. We need to bring that together. Social Doppler. We're going to get into this in more detail. We're going to show you exactly what we mean. This is the first time in the world this has ever been broadcast. We're going public with it today. Deep analytics, social media streams. Extract and analyze mood, look at product sentiment. Use clustering algorithms to create the social Doppler. You can only see it to believe it. We really think that measuring, monitoring, and mapping sentiment continuously across market landscapes is providing businesses, retail outlets, and others with unique opportunities to reach that client and create buying opportunities. This is very exciting and some of the most exciting work we've done in the last 6 months. We see 2014 as being explosive in this area. And then finally, while we're not in the advertising business, advertisers are hungry for creating new mechanisms to service the needs of the retailer to get the real-time ad out and take advantage of that location analytic, that real-time business intelligence. And with that introduction, I'm going to turn it back to Kevin, our moderator today, so that he can engage in the second poll of this webinar. Kevin?
Okay, thanks, Alex. Yeah, now that you've heard a bit about location analytics, we're going to ask you another question. So here's what we'd like to know, and I'm going to go ahead and launch this right now. And it should be on your screen now. How does your organization currently use or plan to use location analytics? Do you plan to use it within your organization only, or do you plan to offer it as an external service, maybe to customers, the public, or business partners? Or C, both internal and external? And again, we ask that you just give us one answer on this one. So this is going to be pretty telling, I think, and especially after Alex gave that good overview of what location analytics really entails. All right.
Interesting results, Kevin. Interesting results.
Yeah, the results are coming over. I'm going to give people a little bit more time on this one. Okay. Yeah, this is interesting. Here, let me, Alex, let me publish these results. I'm going to close off the voting here, and then I'm going to publish the results so everybody in the audience can take a look. And as you see, the majority at 43% said both internal and external. but about a third said we're only going to use it inside the organization, whereas about a quarter say we're going to offer as external service to customers, business partners, etc. Does that surprise you at all, Alex? Anything in there?
Not really. I think this is a really, really exciting new area. I think a lot of, again, I don't have a very good sense of the organizations that are participating today. I haven't looked at our webinar participants, but I think this also helps businesses be successful, and I don't know how many people here are looking at analytics as a service. I know we are, but that would be part of the dialogue, part of the follow-up, and part of why we're doing this. Great.
Okay. Well, let me put the results away, and we're back onto your screen now, Alex, and let's just move forward with what's coming next.
Okay, wonderful. So, folks, at this point, it's my pleasure to introduce one of my colleagues, Brian Collins of GCS. He is our Senior Systems Integrator. Brian comes to us with a diverse background dealing with control systems, geographic information systems, industrial control systems, building automation, machine-to-machine computing, and increasingly is helping lead our initiatives when it comes to Internet of Things, which we're anticipating in this webinar, but we're going to save that for next year. Brian is going to unpack through a series of presentations a narrative regarding social Doppler, what that looks like, why is that meaningful, why does our client want it, what are we achieving. All the things we've discussed, we put together into a live demonstration that we recorded in video. And Brian is, along with other colleagues here at GCS, as the author. He's going to take you through this and unpack it, and then I'll have a chance to dialogue with Brian a little bit and sum up some of the things that you've seen during this location analytics demonstration. Brian, it's over to you now.
Great. Thanks very much, Alex. Happy to be here. Thanks, Kevin. Excited to be presenting the demonstration on today's webinar. As you've heard, you, the audience, have heard, now we are introducing a new technology that we call social Doppler that's currently under development and that we are going to market with in terms of some of our customer base. Today, we've come up with a scenario, again a narrative, as Alex said, to walk you through the storyline of how we would apply this sort of new approach to advertising and market analysis using the sort of disruptive and new data sources such as social media that we can extract meaning from. So first, let me introduce you to the customer. Again, this is a storyline, so I'm not revealing who specifically we're working for. But suffice to say, our customer in this example is a small surf shop, a retailer in Venice Beach, California, retail sales of surfboards, clothing, merchandise, and things related to and associated with the sport of surfing, sort of in the beach culture of Southern California. The customer came to us with a problem, which is they're unhappy with the return that they currently get from their current funds that are geared towards advertising and marketing. And how can a small to medium-sized company utilize location analytics to better target their customers and provide them a way to be notified of the goods that they're reselling at the time that the customer is most inclined to make a purchase. As Alex mentioned before, again, location analytics, market analysis, those sorts of things are subject matter that we as GIS people have dealt with for years and years, utilizing geography to analyze consumer base and market base. So what we're going to do here is zoom into our area of interest. Of course, you can see the large red flag, Southern California, greater Los Angeles urban area. Again, as Alex said, our target here is not companies of any specific size. We feel that the technology that we're developing can be easily scaled and applied at many different levels specific to what vendors and retailers need in terms of marketing more directly at specific times to their target customers. So again, we've zoomed into the greater Los Angeles area. We are looking again at our VB surf shop, Venice Beach Surf Shop. Okay, right here I'm popping up just a quick overview of some of their competition. This is capitalism. There's other surf shops that are out there fighting for the same dollar from the consumer. So how does our client improve their technique to appeal and ultimately make the sale to these customers ahead of their competition? So let's pull into Venice Beach. Again, you see a few competitors in the area. Red flag indicates our VB surf shop. And excuse me, you know, traditionally then what a company of this size does that may have a number of shops in a certain region is look at demographic data. It's commonly accessible freely. It can be analyzed. Byproducts can be developed. So what we're going to look at here really quick in their sales area are some of those data. Median household income, for example, commonly used, distributed down to the granularity of census block. Other data can be derived from that median household income. One of those may be something such as the potential for retail spending. Again, granularity is at the census block level. This helps a retailer understand some of the dynamics, socioeconomics, demographics of their area, but doesn't apply specifically to individuals potentially at the point when they're inclined to buy a product from that vendor. Again here, median age, looking at the age of the people that reside, claim residence in those areas. And finally, population density, you know, just a general overview of how many people potentially are you targeting here. So utilizing all those factors is what we would call sort of traditional market analysis. But that sort of defines then the crux that retailers are seeing now. They're finding a shift from traditional advertising in static media to a shift in mobile device marketing. So how does a small to medium-sized retailer like this reach out to potential customers on mobile devices to communicate with them when they're ready to make a purchase? So I'm going to pause here for a minute, and Alex, maybe we can dialogue for a little bit and discuss why advertising dollars currently might be being wasted on relying on static market data and advertising.
Well, again, thanks, Brian. I don't know if they're actually being wasted. I think what we're talking about is leveraging those dollars into better job of consuming real-time information.
Sure.
So
yep.
what you shared there is a very, very powerful set of data that we used to help inform the status quo and essentially the market definition for one shop. Understanding, of course, that a lot of the clients that go in and out of that shop are coming from around the world or outside the LA basin. But at the end of the day, that is a sense of the consumer, and it is a sense of the market, and it helped them make decisions about where they were going. Now, we felt, and as you just highlighted, there's a lot more information out there, and our job was to go get it, to analyze it, and begin to find new novel ways using location analytics and some proprietary algorithms to help drive new customers into the store. They wanted to grow their business by 23%, 25%. They came to us with a budget. They wanted to expand that budget, and it was our job to help find those clients and get those clients in the door. So again, I think it's augmenting those existing dollars and looking at new creative ways to take advantage of mobile analytics and what people are saying and how they're saying it and where they're saying it. Things are becoming incredibly granular now and very specific, and as you said, Brian, very individualized. And that's the challenge today of mass mobile media marketing, is to find a way of slicing the market into much, much smaller granular segments and get them in the store. And that's why this is so powerful. So that would be my comment to your first part.
Yeah, great, excellent. So let me frame up the next part of the demonstration here a little bit before we actually press play again here on the demonstration. In order to prepare you for what you're going to see here, you're going to start to see some of the building blocks upon which we've developed this concept and realize this technology again that we're calling social Doppler, based on a number of very complex and proprietary algorithms, both spatial and non-spatial, to come to the final result that you'll see toward the end of the demonstration. So first and foremost, what I'm going to transition here now is to show you social media events, again focusing in this case on Twitter data, data that's accessible to us, streaming very fast, and the initial task is to capture that data and somehow analyze it on the fly, extract what makes sense to us, and omit what doesn't make sense to us. So what you're seeing right here in this screenshot, again, the red flag indicates the location of our surf shop. This is geolocated tweets, Twitter posts, that occurred over roughly a 3-day period earlier this month in October. The first thing that's apparent when you look at this is the volume. Again, Alex mentioned volume. It's an overwhelming amount of data. Again, this is 3 days worth of data. We collected for this sample for the demonstration over 160,000 individual geolocated tweets. Just to give you an example, that's roughly 35 tweets a minute or over 2,000 per hour, and that's only for geolocated tweets. The interesting thing here is that these are events, tweets that specifically have a latitude or longitude designated within the streaming data, so we're actually able to specifically identify a finite location. Twitter also adds location based on more generalized areas, cities, towns, those sorts of things. So again, volume of data. So what do we do with that? How do we make sense of that? And ultimately, how do we use this to benefit our client who's trying to improve their margin in terms of sales? Well, the first thing that we have to do is extract the data. The challenge here is understanding the context from the content. So in other words, parsing through this data, the variety of data, and again, in this case, in this example, this is text data. So the first pass here in our approach is to use algorithms that are able to parse that incoming streaming Twitter feed and actually estimate a quantitative value. And I shouldn't say estimate there, I should say that they actually define a quantitative value for the sentiment that's indicated in the words in the tweet. So in other words, the algorithm, again, is extracting the context from the content. So what you're seeing here are green and red and yellow dots, and they all mean something. In general here, green dots mean happy, positive moods. Red dots mean negative sentiment, negative emotion, and yellow and orange would be the transitional, neutral, slightly positive, slightly negative values. Again, though, we're still not getting over the hurdle here of the volume, tremendous volume of data. Part of the reason is I'm showing you 3 days worth of data here. So one thing that we have to do, in addition to the volume and the velocity, is narrow down the time increments that really define what this data means. So I've turned off the raw data symbolized as dots, and now for the first time here you're seeing social Doppler. You're seeing a number of polygons, again symbolized with the same color scheme as the points, and again you're seeing still a large volume of data. Great, we see a lot of red, green, yellow, orange polygons on the map. What do the colors represent just real quickly here? Well, again, red represents a very negative sentiment, very negative emotion in terms of this. But really what we're seeing here now is the combination of the non-spatial computations and algorithms being combined with some spatial location analytics, clustering algorithms, and as Alex mentioned, correlation. So correlating what's being said, when it's being said, where it's being said. Now let's break it down to a little bit more granular level here. And actually what I'm going to do here is play an animation. And again, we're likening this to what most people are familiar with, and that is watching weather patterns move across the landscape. But in this case, we're not looking at a weather system. We're actually looking at emotional or sentiment systems as they occur over time based on harvesting this big data social media feed. So again, as we transition here, I broke this into 4-hour increments for this demo over the course of October 11th, or rather 10th through the 13th. And again, we see mood changing. We pull in a little bit tighter to our area of interest here. There's our surf shop again, and we see that sentiment is changing. Right now, in the center of our market area for the surf shop, Very positive sentiment. Bingo. This is where we make the connection between sentiment and emotion of the population that may have the potential to purchase and the retailer who wants to sell something to an individual who's inclined to buy a given product based on their mood. Now, one thing that's important to mention here too is that we're not specifically targeting positive mood. There's direct correlations in research that show that positive and negative moods directly influence what we purchase as consumers. So again, it just so happened that we had positive sentiment near our example retailer in this case, and we're drawing that correlation right there. Boom! This is the time in which that retailer reaches out to people in that dark green area and sends them an advertisement to a mobile device in order to connect with them when they're ready to make a purchase. Okay, Alex, I'm going to pause here and let's recap on that a little bit.
So there's a lot there. We don't expect our audience to digest all that, but that's social Doppler. When we started working on this project for our client, and this is becoming popular for other clients, we realized that we had stumbled on to, originally the first concept was this idea of cultural meteorology. And we talked about looking at parallels or metaphors for describing this. And the challenge we had was to take all the data that you saw before and then combine that with one, if not many, social media streams, apply an algorithm that we've developed in order to extract mood and measure that. And then once we were able to create a scale to that, apply that to just a tremendous amount of information coming in. We normalize that, and what really is at the heart of those polygons you see there, some clustering around a density of a negative mood, some clustering, is a very, very elegant clustering algorithm that we're applying continuously in real time. So that as you look at this and you record this, not only are we building a historical database model that helps us understand how things have changed over time and why, and the impacts of advertising, localized advertising, regional advertising, but it's also actually allowing us to look at shifts that are occurring over time, and that actually allows us to have some very, very exciting insights to try to get that customer in the store. So with that, I'll turn it back to Brian.
Great. Thanks, Alex. Yeah, a couple more things that I want to just touch on. Again, when I see that red flag in the middle of the dark green polygon, coming from an educator background to some extent myself, I love the concept of the teachable moment, that moment in which you really engage with the student. And when I look at this in terms of transforming the paradigm of marketing and advertising to people, is that we are really capturing here potentially the sellable moment, that in which the sales process is leveraged with real-time location analytics to target customers specifically on those mobile devices. So with that, I'm going to continue, and let me set up the final segment of our demonstration here. What we're about to see is a little video footage of social Doppler in action on Venice Beach in California. Great. So here we have a potential customer for our client, our retailer. This happens to be one of Alex and my coworkers and colleagues, Mike Belt, who was recently in Southern California. Mike's on the beach enjoying his day, much nicer weather in Southern California, and he just received a message from the VB Surf Shop. Hashtag Surfs Up at the VB Surf Shop. All threads 25% off now until 5. Again, the retailer reaching out to Mike as a consumer through mobile applications, allowing him to consume that information and make that decision. He's in a good mood. He's on vacation. Sure, he'd like to pick up some memorabilia from his trip to Southern California before he comes back to Montana. Okay, so fast forward here. Mike has made his way to the VB Surf Shop and is browsing the contents of the store. Here we see what we'd expect, lots of surfboards, t-shirts, shoes, hats, etc. What is Mike going to choose to buy to bring back to Montana? Looks like he's focusing in on some t-shirts. And ultimately, the culmination here, pretty simple, but social Doppler resulting in the sale of a product by the retailer, happy consumer making his purchase, happy retailer, successful interaction between GCS, allowing this customer to make the purchase because they were directly targeted in this fashion. And that is it for our demonstration.
Yeah, let me just say one thing there, though. I really wanted to drive home a point you made, Brian, and that is what we're seeing in the delivery of this model and of these analytics, these location analytics, is exactly what you said. The ability for the advertiser to send the right message at the right time to the right location, ultimately to that consumer. So we have information that is basically going to the store, and they are then in turn using that to reach out and target consumers in a new way. So that tweet is not only announcing the ad, is announcing the sale, but is driving the consumer to the store location, is it driving the consumer inside, leveraging, again, mood that is being measured continuously across an entire basin of 14.5 million people. Now, as time progresses and you start to see the impact of this, you start to see a tremendous amount of empirical evidence being created that looks at the relationship between the advertising dollar, those messages, and retail sales. And that's what's getting very exciting, is now we're starting to see a whole new level of business intelligence as a function of location analytics. Back to you, Brian.
Thanks, Alex. Appreciate it. Great commentary. And I'm going to hand control back over to you now to conclude the contents of the webinar. Thanks.
Hey, Alex, I think you may have muted yourself by accident there. If you want to start over on the summary.
Sorry, I'm here. Again, in summary, thanks a lot, Brian, for your efforts. That was fantastic. Location analytics, again, is more than simply geocoding things on a map. A static map that doesn't move, is not dynamic, does not involve things like mood maps and polymorphic polygons and real-time analytics. That's what we're excited about. That's what we think is driving next generation consumer behavior. What we've shown here today is getting at a lot of what, how people are feeling, how they're expressing that, a new dimension, not the only dimension, but a new dimension of harvesting intelligence and making sense of that. Obviously, it involves when. Some of that data is coming incredibly quickly. Some of it is over time, so time series. Where is everywhere in social Doppler, and ultimately, we're trying to understand better ways of explaining the why of buying, the why of driving a consumer into a store, developing a relationship between that small to medium enterprise and the consumer, expanding those frontiers, leveraging essentially the notion of sensors everywhere. Phones are everywhere, everybody is communicating, and we're able to measure that now in new ways. That is culminating in new products and new services, analytics as a service. We've coined one, Social Doppler, the idea of continuous sentiment from social media and other sources to really correlate the right time for the right ad in the right way. Those are very, very subtle changes that are occurring. They're incredibly powerful changes that are occurring in our consumer market. The organizations that are gathering that data, harvesting that data, trying to make sense of that data are going to transform retail. And now with that, I'm going to turn it back to Kevin to conduct poll number 3.
Okay, great. Thanks, Alex. I'm going to move through the poll pretty quickly here. Before I launch it, just want to let the audience know we're getting ready for the Q&A, so please start sending your questions via the question box. Just type them in, and I will read them live to the panelists to answer. And let's move on to poll number 3, and that's popping up on your screen now. Okay, so you know about Social Doppler. Do you feel it's a technology or a solution that could benefit your organization? And again, just select one here. Yes, no, maybe you're still not sure. So we'll give you a few minutes here. Well, I should say a few seconds. We're going to try to move into Q&A pretty quickly. So hate to ask the audience to do 2 things at once, but go ahead, answer the poll question, and then shoot your questions to us. All right. And I'm just going to keep it open for another few seconds here. And all right, I'm going to close it off, and we're going to take a look at the results. I'm going to share the results on screen. So a lot of you still aren't sure. Actually, about half of you aren't sure yet. And yeah, it's kind of a new technology, new concept, so I think that's to be expected. But 3/4 of you said yes, and a very small number said no. So I think those are numbers that we can definitely live with and learn from. But let's move ahead pretty quickly here. And Alex, if you want to advance to the next slide. Before we get to Q&A, we're going to have the drawing for the Google Nexus 7 tablet. And this is a great 7-inch tablet. And the winner is Cindy Poole. And Cindy is online right now. Cindy, if you can send us through the chat window or question window your contact information. We probably have your email already from registration. But we will be mailing off the Google Nexus 7 tablet to you. So let's go on to the next slide. We're going to go right into the Q&A session here. All right, Alex, if you want to send us to the next slide. There we go. Okay, good. And the questions are starting to come in. The first question, Alex, it's going to go to you. This person wants to know how many different algorithms were used to provide information to the store in that demo we looked at.
Okay. Good question. Excellent question. Thank you for whoever sent that in. I guess it was Gary from the chat here. There was really 4 fundamental quote-unquote algorithms that we leveraged or harvested or created for this solution. The first was really about parsing and routing and managing social media feeds like Twitter and leveraging that text. I wouldn't consider it a significant algorithm, but we had to find a way to continuously consume and analyze that data. And after just a few days, we had about 1.5 million tweets that we were storing, and then we had to automate that. We used a technology developed by IBM called InfoSphere Streams that works in collaboration with ArcGIS Server to handle that heavy lifting. The next major class, of course, is attempting to find content from context and to parse text and to really begin to do some analysis on quote-unquote mood, and then secondarily to do some analysis on sentiment regarding tweets that are fired off into populations around surfing, surf shop, boogie boards, surf this, surf that, and the kind of culture and the kind of thing that our client had. So really we had to do a lot there, and we used an algorithm that we developed for that, and that was really allowing us to begin to create that what I call thematized layer that we were then able to polygonize. Now the third major class, of course, is a clustering algorithm. We used a particular dynamic centroid. We did some nearest neighbor calculations all dynamically and allowed us to create a mean and to map within a certain radius into those clouds you saw or those clusters of color. And then once we got done with that, we created a time series. So we're able to do some FFTs on that. We're able to watch that move and grow and evolve across a basin. From 12 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the morning, it slows down. And as that begins to happen, we were able to do what we call a fifth function, which is a continuous analytic that essentially is analyzing the time series. So now we're doing a spatial temporal analysis. And at that point, we're getting down to mechanics. I wouldn't say we're doing too much more with algorithms. We had our hands full. We built most of this for a pilot project for the client in about 2.5 months from contract to completion. It's being beta tested. It's being analyzed. We're trying to look at that ROI right now. But the question is an excellent one. That's the whole point of location analytics. And if anybody wants to know more about that, they need to send us email. We can share what we can share and let people understand where this is going. So okay. Thanks, Kevin.
Yep, great. And Brian, here's a quick one for you. How does the store owner get that social Doppler information delivered to them?
Yeah, great question. In short, they subscribe to that as a web service. So without divulging too many details, easy-to-use consumable web service that allows them to correlate both the products with the mood or sentiment, and then ultimately instantiate or send out the advertising to the mobile devices to target specific customers within those dynamic sales areas, again, that are changing based on the social Doppler effect.
Okay, great. And here's the interesting question. Somebody says, is it possible to falsify your latitude, longitude when tweeting?
Interesting question. Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
You would have to go in, depending on the device, and hack the GPS controller. I'm sure that if there's a will, there's a will, there's a way. But that's not something we were solving for, and that's not something we were doing in this regard. I think anything's possible today when it comes to mobile devices.
Okay. Here's a really interesting question. Is the tweet sentiment being measured with respect to a particular topic, such as outdoor activities, or just overall sentiment?
It's overall mood more than sentiment in the initial pass. There is a difference technically, and we don't pretend to be experts in natural language processing, and there's a lot of companies that we're competing with that are looking at how to parse this and understand that consumer, et cetera, et cetera. But initially, it's just general mood. Now, there is a recursive opportunity that I mentioned a minute ago where you can be actually, as an advertiser or as a store with an advertising agent, you can begin to launch different messages out into the environment, into these territories that Brian was describing that are ever-changing, dynamic. They're not static. You know, they're not measured once every 10 years or 5 years. And then what you can start to see is get reflection, you know, like the Doppler signal and reflectivity. We can see reflection and reaction to what the questionnaire just asked, specific products, specific brands, specific things. And the other thing we've been noticing, and we've been collaborating with some other companies on this aspect that really specialize in the psychology of consumer behavior, a la social media, we also saw that it's not just everybody that's happy that buys stuff. Actually, the right time, the right place to advertise, the right segment, the right polygon is usually a function of a combination of both. So it's getting very interesting in terms of the psychology of this. Now, our job is to put all those algorithms together, make this work, and to get the data to the client in the simplest, fastest way so that they can judge this and measure that. But it's an excellent question, and actually, to answer it, we're measuring both.
Okay, and people are really thinking about their questions here. Here's another great one. Well, in general, the question is, can the owner of the surf shop, when he wants to blast out his tweet, can he target just the people who are in that green polygon, you know, the people in the good mood?
Yeah, that's the whole point, and that's what's exciting about this, and that's why it's the amount of energy and money going into just exactly what that questionnaire asked is what's so exciting. Heretofore, you didn't know what to necessarily send to that area, so now we're slicing and dicing the market into smaller and smaller segments, more and more individual. We're getting into one-to-one advertising, and we're actually able to make that location based on dynamic measurements of mood. So that's exactly what's going on, and you're going to see an explosion of that in 14.
Great, great. We are getting so many interesting questions. Let me just bang through them here. Here's one actually that I asked you when I first saw the demo. How do you collect the tweet information? This person just curious about how Twitter shares that information.
Yeah, some of that is proprietary to our relationship with Twitter. There's a lot you can do there. Essentially, we are collecting it. We're collecting a slice as inexpensively as possible of using the Twitter API. I think, Brian, for the demo here, if something like 700, 800,000 tweets were collected for our test area, the greater LA basin, that is a small fraction, as mentioned, of what's possible. Out of that is a small fraction of people that are actually geo-enabling their tweet. So again, this is a sample of a sample of a sample. And one of the things we've been working on with our client, and we're working on with other clients, is how to statistically defend that kind of sampling. We're using some Bayesian techniques to come up with probability theory. I didn't want to get into a lecture here on Bayesian algorithms. I think that might be for the next webinar. But essentially, we're doing a sample of a sample. We're running some sampling techniques to come up with a statistically defensible group. And frankly, depending on how this goes and what these revenues look like, we may be expanding that and growing that. The other thing is, notice too, we're not interested in sharing the tweets. Those are the property of others. We're simply interested in analyzing the words and the symbology and attempting to derive that and then correlate that over time with a whole bunch of other things that are going on that Brian was trying to show you originally. We didn't get into where all the schools are and where all the shopping malls are and what's going on in Disneyland and what's going on at LAX. If you actually start to do a many-to-many correlative function, which we didn't have time to show, you actually get reinforcing signals in that cultural mapping that allows you to look at trends in the LA basin over time, and we've just begun to scratch the surface. Excellent question, though, by the way.
Yeah, we're getting so many questions here. Another great one. Can you look at historical time periods for tweets and other social media?
Yeah, you can, and that's another way to access a lot of data. Of course, with hashtags, everybody hashtagging everything, that's the searchable term. And there are significant marketing companies out there now that are doing that from Madison Avenue to Menlo Park. I mean, people are realizing there's an explosion of everybody has a device. It's mobile. Some of that is geospatially enabled. People are going from device to device to device. IBM is claiming out of Menlo Park, out of Almaden Research Center, they can get a psychological profile on you based on 200 tweets. So the answer to the question is yes. Combining that with the real time, conducting time series allows you to see patterns. It allows you to test hypotheses, and it allows you very inexpensively to determine ways of growing sales by doing one-to-one mobile marketing.
Great, and somebody asked a really good question here. Is this solution located on the premises or is it in the cloud?
It's all cloud. We're not in LA. We're in Missoula, Montana. We have clients all over the world. The great thing about being a solutions company like us that delivers these analytics is, yeah, it's nice for us to fly down and work with the client, but at the end of the day, the analytics is being conducted in the cloud. It actually is a hybrid cloud, part Microsoft, part IBM, part us. The client doesn't care about that. They want to pay for answers. And that's what we deliver them, not only through a web service, but actually an RSS feed as well. So that's where we're at with the delivery model.
Okay, great. Another really interesting question. Can you measure sentiment around one specific keyword? And I was imagining, let's say, right after the Dodgers lost their baseball game in the playoffs.
Yeah, you can. The answer is you can. It's actually easier to do than what we've been doing. As I mentioned already in the webinar, we've been doing both. It's sort of a recursive flow. It's called cascading. Continuous cascading analytics is a buzz term. We did another project for another client around the Super Bowl, and they really wanted to test and judge their brand. And that brand happened to be one of the top three motor vehicle brands. I can't mention the brand, but there's three, at least in the United States. And out of 900,000 tweets, they wanted to measure how that brand was being received during the Super Bowl ads, during the middle of the Super Bowl, and see how that was. So we hooked up the API, we sucked it all down, we did analytics on the actual one word, and we delivered that to the client as a web service, all in real time, which allowed them to judge how their $18 million was being effective during the Super Bowl.
Great. Okay, we barely got to half the questions we received. Let me go one last one that'll be a great one to wrap up with. Somebody wants to know, have you applied this technology to natural disaster events, traffic incidents, or other emergency response incidents?
Okay, well, great question. So someone is smart on this webinar in that you may or may not wonder where some of this came from. So we at GCS are really focusing on commercial. We're really focusing on retail and some of our insurance clients, our energy clients, et cetera. But if we were to do this webinar again and to go to Cairo and to look at what happened there during some of those events in the last 2 years, you may or may not see direct analogies in terms of this, in terms of law enforcement, security, and how to influence crowds. This didn't come out of nowhere, and that's what we do at GCS, is we're continuously recycling our insights so we can deliver value to our clients.
Okay, terrific. And we'll have somebody from GCS get in touch with the folks who asked a lot of these other questions. I'm sorry we just couldn't get to them all. And Alex, if you want to go ahead and advance our last slide, we're out of time. And first, I'd like to thank our audience members for joining us today for the third Geospatial Big Data webinar of 2013. And just one more reminder that you're invited back in January when we kick off another series of webinars. And we'll let you know when we schedule that next one for January. And in just a minute, you'll be receiving a brief survey from us. Please take a minute to fill it out and let us know what you thought of today's webinar. We'll also be looking for your ideas for big data topics we might address in next year's series of webinars. And if you have any other questions about geospatial big data, please visit the website at www.yourdatasmarter.com. Thank you on behalf of GCS.